The Great Pyramid of Giza was built approximately 4,500 years ago for the pharaoh Khufu, who reigned from around 2509 to 2483 BCE. It stands 138 meters tall, reduced from its original 146 meters by the loss of its outer casing stones over millennia, and its base spreads across more than 13 acres of the Giza Plateau outside Cairo. It is constructed from an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, the largest of which weigh up to 80 tons. For nearly 5 millennia, it was the tallest structure on Earth. It remains the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. And it has been studied, measured, surveyed, and obsessed over by every major civilization that has encountered it since the ancient Greeks first wrote about it. Despite all of that, for all those thousands of years of study, until a decade ago, the entire scientific community's knowledge of what was inside the Great Pyramid was limited to what could be physically entered and walked through. 3 known chambers: the underground chamber, carved into the bedrock beneath the pyramid; the Queen's Chamber, reached via a horizontal passage midway up the structure; and the King's Chamber, containing the famous sarcophagus, accessible via the Grand Gallery, a magnificent corbelled corridor 153 feet long and 26 feet tall that rises at a steep angle toward the pyramid's heart. 5 small compartments above the King's Chamber, stacked on top of each other like a series of flat attic spaces, designed to relieve the crushing weight of the stone mass above. Several narrow shafts, approximately 7 inches by 5 inches, extending from the King's and Queen's chambers toward the pyramid's exterior, whose purpose remains genuinely, formally unknown. And the descending corridor, the original entrance passage carved into the pyramid's north face. That was it. 4,500 years of investigation, and those were the internal features humanity knew about. The rest of the pyramid's interior, the vast majority of its 2.6 million cubic meters of volume, was presumed to be solid stone. That presumption was wrong. And what revealed the truth was not a shovel or a drill or a camera. It was physics. Muons are subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays, streams of high-energy particles racing through the galaxy from supernovae, merging neutron stars and black holes, collide with molecules in Earth's upper atmosphere. That collision generates a shower of secondary particles, and muons are among them. They are heavier than electrons, electrically charged and extraordinarily penetrating. Unlike X-rays, which are absorbed by relatively modest thicknesses of material, muons can pass through hundreds of meters of rock before being stopped. They rain down from the sky continuously. In extraordinary numbers, thousands of them pass through your body every single minute, harmlessly, undetected. If you're reading this on a smartphone, more than 6 muons will have passed through that screen by the time you finish this sentence. The key property that makes muons useful for imaging large structures is simple. They are absorbed more readily by dense material than by empty space. If you place a detector beneath or inside a large structure and count the muons arriving from different directions, you can identify voids, empty spaces inside the structure, by the fact that more muons arrive from those directions than from directions where solid stone sits. The technique, called muon tomography or muography, had been used to peer inside volcanoes, to scan Mayan pyramids, to inspect cathedral walls. It had first been proposed for use on the Egyptian pyramids by physicist Luis Alvarez in the 1960s. The technology of that era was not sensitive enough to produce useful results. By the 2010s it was. The Scan Pyramids mission was launched in 2015 as an international collaboration between the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, the Paris-based Heritage Innovation Preservation Institute, and research teams from Nagoya University in Japan, the French Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission, the CEA, and Cairo University. Their mandate was to apply non-destructive scanning technologies, muography, infrared thermography, ground-penetrating radar, ultrasound, to the major pyramids at Giza and Dashur. They would not drill, they would not cut, they would not disturb a single stone. They would listen to what the physics told them. What the physics told them, when the first results were fully processed, stopped everyone in the room. In November 2017, the Scan Pyramids team published their findings in the journal Nature. 3 independent groups, using 3 different muon detector systems placed at different positions in and around the Great Pyramid, had all found the same thing. Above the Grand Gallery, roughly 20 meters above the floor of the pyramid, in a region that every previous survey had assumed was solid stone, there was a void. Not a small void, not a crack or a fissure or a minor gap in the masonry. A massive empty space at least 30 meters long, approximately 8 meters high, and several meters wide. A space comparable in size to the Grand Gallery itself, sitting directly above it, completely sealed inside the pyramid, completely inaccessible by any known passage, undisturbed for 4,500 years. Mehdi Tayyoubi, president of the HIP Institute and a leader of the research effort, said, "Such a big void can't be an accident." His team stated their confidence in the existence of the void at 99.99999%. Not a statistical fluke, not a reflection of the Grand Gallery below, not porous rock or loose rubble, but a genuine, massive, empty space inside the most studied building in the history of human civilization that nobody had ever known was there. Yukinori Kawai, an archaeologist and Egyptologist from Nagoya University, said, "This is definitely the discovery of the century." He added the line that captured the full weight of the moment. There have been many hypotheses about the pyramid, but no one even imagined that such a big void is located above the Grand Gallery. Mark Lanner, director of the Ancient Egypt Research Association and one of the most respected Egyptologists alive, confirmed that the void was real. He was cautious about its interpretation, as any rigorous scientist should be. "I would expect it to be some kind of weight-relieving space between the roof of the Grand Gallery and the mass of the pyramid core," he said. The 5 compartments above the King's Chamber served exactly this structural purpose. Perhaps the void above the Grand Gallery was another such feature. But subsequent analysis by the Scan Pyramids team raised a problem with this interpretation. Simulations showed that the big void, as the team had taken to calling it, was located approximately 10 meters above the Grand Gallery, too far away to provide meaningful structural support to the passage below. It did not fit the profile of any known weight-relieving feature in the pyramid, and it was far too large. "For all the world, I'll bet this is a relieving space for the Grand Gallery," Leonard said, but he acknowledged that the details remained troubling. The big void had been physically inaccessible since the day the pyramid was sealed. It still is. It has never been entered. It has never been photographed. Nothing that is inside it, if anything is inside it, has ever been seen by any human being. And as of 2026, its purpose remains entirely, formally, scientifically unknown. That was 2017. 6 years later, in March 2023, the Scan Pyramids team returned with more results and another discovery that rewrote the map of the pyramid's interior. Beginning in 2016, the team's muon detectors had identified a smaller void sitting just behind the chevron, a distinctive arrangement of 4 large limestone blocks near the top of the pyramid's north face, arranged in the shape of 2 inverted downward open angles, visible from outside the pyramid and long noted by archaeologists, without anyone understanding their purpose. The void behind the chevron was much smaller than the big void, a corridor rather than a chamber, but the muon data indicated it was real. Between 2020 and 2022, the Scan Pyramids team conducted 3 independent measurement campaigns using ground-penetrating radar, ultrasound, and electrical resistivity tomography to characterize it precisely. The results were published simultaneously in Nature Communications and NDT&E International on March 2nd, 2023. The void was confirmed. It was a corridor, 9 meters long, approximately 30 feet, roughly 2 meters wide and 2 meters tall with a vaulted ceiling. It lay just inside the pyramid's north face, behind the chevron blocks, parallel to the descending corridor but separate from it. It had never appeared in any previous map of the pyramid's interior. It had not been entered since the pyramid was built more than 4,500 years ago. Using an endoscope, a thin, flexible camera inserted through a tiny gap in the chevron blocks, the team took the first photographs ever made of the interior of this corridor. The images showed a narrow passage with a vaulted ceiling of rough limestone blocks, empty, covered in fine dust that had settled over centuries without disturbance, lit for the first time in over 4,000 years by the endoscope's light. What was its purpose? The team published their measurements. They published the photographs. They stated clearly that the corridor's function remains unknown. Zahi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister of Antiquities and the most publicly prominent Egyptologist in the world, noted that the corridor might be hiding another chamber. That is not a confirmed finding. It is a hypothesis, and it is stated as such. Sébastien Procureur of the CEA, one of the paper's lead authors, said simply, "We still have so much to learn from this amazing monument, despite the fact that it has been an object of interest for thousands of years." Now consider what the real data has produced. 2 hidden spaces inside the most studied building in the world, both found not by drilling or digging, but by listening to particles generated by exploded stars on the other side of the galaxy. One of them, the 9-meter corridor, has been photographed for the first time. The other, the big void, is over 30 meters long, has been confirmed by 3 independent research groups using different detector systems, and has not been entered or explained. And both were found in a structure that archaeologists, engineers, and tourists had been examining for 4,500 years without detecting either of them. This is the actual disturbing finding, not a chatbot's invented conclusion. The real data revealed that the Great Pyramid of Giza has been keeping secrets from every generation of human beings who ever looked at it, including the most technologically sophisticated generation in history, which required instruments capable of detecting cosmic radiation to finally begin to see inside it. The sarcophagus in the King's Chamber deserves its own moment here. because the fake Grok videos stole a real fact about it and misattributed it. The granite sarcophagus inside the king's chamber is genuinely too large to have been brought through any of the passages leading to that chamber. It was not carried in. It was placed inside the chamber during construction, and the pyramid was built around it. That is a real documented architectural fact noted by Egyptologists for decades. It is not evidence of a lost civilization or an energy machine. It is evidence of a construction sequence. The sarcophagus was positioned first, and the chamber was then completed around it. But it is real, and it is strange, and it belongs in any honest account of what the pyramid contains. The air shafts, those narrow channels approximately 7 inches by 5 inches extending from both the king's and queen's chambers toward the pyramid's exterior, are also real and also genuinely unexplained. For decades they were called ventilation shafts, a name that made intuitive sense but that engineers have since demonstrated does not hold up. The shafts from the queen's chamber do not even reach the pyramid's exterior. They terminate inside the structure. They cannot have been for ventilation. Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory, which proposes that the shafts were oriented towards specific stars, important in Egyptian religious cosmology. Orion's belt for the king's chamber shafts, Thuban for the others, is a real academic proposal, published in peer-reviewed literature. It is debated and not accepted as settled by mainstream Egyptology. But it is a legitimate scholarly hypothesis, not a conspiracy theory, and it illustrates the genuine uncertainty that still surrounds the pyramid's internal design intentions. The worker graffiti inside the pyramid is perhaps the most human detail in this entire story, and it is one that is almost never told in the sensationalist videos that prefer mystery to fact. In 2013, a team led by Zahi Hawass discovered painted inscriptions inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. Space is not open to the public and rarely entered even by researchers. The inscriptions, written in red ochre, name the work gang responsible for constructing that section of the pyramid, the Friends of Khufu. This was not a slave gang forced to labor under a whip, as the ancient Greek historian Herodotus had claimed, and as popular imagination had perpetuated for centuries. It was a work team proud enough of their achievement to write their name on the walls inside the structure they built. Mark Lehner's excavations of the workers' city at Giza, a settlement discovered south of the Sphinx and systematically excavated since the 1990s, found evidence of a highly organized, well-fed workforce of skilled laborers, bread ovens on an industrial scale, butchery operations producing meat in quantities consistent with a large, regularly fed population, medical evidence in the skeletal remains of workers showing healed injuries, suggesting a society that cared for its wounded rather than discarding them. The idea that the Great Pyramid was built by an enslaved population working in misery has been dismantled by the physical evidence found 100 meters from the pyramid itself. What built the Great Pyramid was not slavery. It was the most sophisticated logistical operation in the ancient world, feeding, housing, and coordinating a workforce that Lehner estimates at somewhere between 10,000 and 25,000 skilled workers at peak construction. How those workers moved multi-ton stone blocks remains one of the most actively debated questions in the field. The internal ramp hypothesis, proposed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin and supported by certain anomalies visible in the pyramid's structure when analyzed with muography, suggests that the outer casing stones were raised using a long external ramp for the lower 2/3 of the pyramid's height, while an internal spiral ramp, a passage coiling upward through the pyramid's core, was used for the upper portions. Houdin's model explains features of the structure that other models struggle with. It is not universally accepted. The debate continues. What is certain is that every attempt to explain the construction of the Great Pyramid using only the tools and knowledge available to 4th Dynasty Egypt has produced a model that works, partially. Not one model explains everything. Not one account of the construction, from Lehner's workers' city to Houdin's internal ramp to the ramp and sledge experiments conducted in the 1990s, resolves every open question. And that is not because a lost civilization built the pyramid, or because ancient astronauts were involved, or because Grok AI found a disturbing truth that archaeologists are suppressing. It is because the Great Pyramid is an engineering achievement so vast, so precisely executed, and so thoroughly stripped of its original context by 1,500 years of time and human interference, that the full story of its construction has simply not yet been fully recovered. What the real AI technology has actually contributed to pyramid research is worth stating clearly, because it is genuinely impressive and quite different from what the fabricated Grok videos described. The machine learning systems applied to the scanned pyramid's data, algorithms trained to distinguish genuine voids from detector noise, to model the three-dimensional shape of spaces from multiple muon datasets gathered at different positions, to combine radar, ultrasound, and muography results into integrated three-dimensional maps. These systems are real, documented, and have produced real results. The 2225 Scientific Reports paper by Schumacher, Pugacheva and colleagues from Portland State University, the Technical University of Munich, and Cairo University used image fusion techniques combining 3 independent non-destructive testing methods to produce the most precise characterization yet of the North Face corridor. That is AI-assisted analysis of real physical data, producing real published results in real peer-reviewed journals. What those real AI systems found was not a conspiracy, not a suppressed truth, not a disturbing conclusion that researchers were pushing to bury. What they found was a vaulted corridor, 9 meters long that no human being had entered since the pyramid was sealed, and a massive void more than 30 meters long whose purpose remains genuinely, formally unknown. And the Nagoya University team, which continues to scan the big void with the most sensitive muon detectors ever deployed in this application, has stated that they have unpublished findings about the void that will be released in the near future. That is what the real data revealed, not a chatbot's invented output dressed in the vocabulary of mystery. Physics, subatomic particles raining down from exploded stars. Detectors placed inside a 4,500-year-old structure by teams of scientists from France, Japan, Germany, and Egypt. Images taken by an endoscope of a corridor, sealed for 4.5 millennia and never before photographed. And a void, still not entered, still not explained, sitting in the heart of the most studied structure on Earth, waiting in the dark of solid stone for whoever finds a way to finally reach it. The Great Pyramid has been standing for 4,500 years. It has given up 2 of its hidden spaces to technology that did not exist a decade ago. It has not given up the largest one yet. And the instruments listening to it, detecting the ghost particles of dead stars passing through its ancient stone, are still running, still counting, still finding things that were never supposed to be there.